Welcome to the Iferia TechCast. We'll bring you all things science, engineering, technology, and innovation. Today we are joined by Dan Hafner, a self-taught software developer, no-code evangelist, and founder of Dapper No Code, an agency helping solopreneurs and startups turn app ideas into reality without writing a single line of code. From hacking together a fitness app in spare time to powering businesses with scalable no-code solutions, Dan's journey proves that innovation thrives at the intersection of grit and tooling. His work has been recognized as the best no-code development in the US, and he's built everything from AI-driven menu platforms for college to SaaS tools all without traditional coding. So, Dan, you're the founder of Dapper No Code. So, briefly tell us what it's about.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. So I built my agency Dapper No Code, which is a specific no code app and software development agency specifically for solopreneurs, startups, really people in that small boutique, not even boutique type of business, but just a small operation. And the reason I built this was I started in the world of software, kind of working my way through figuring out how to build things via, no code tools. And I found that there was a lot of flexibility, a lot of cool things that you could do. And it really started off as a hobby for me 7 or 8 years ago. And I turned it into a freelancing gig and then eventually into an agency business. So we build, pretty much anything and everything in terms of internal tools, mobile apps, or even just full SaaS platforms for those types of businesses and people that I mentioned. And that's what we do. We do it using no code tools.
Great. So, you started Dapper No Code without a traditional coding background. Is that right?
Correct.
So, what convinced you that no code tools could build production-ready apps?
Yeah. So the what got me sold on the fact that you could do production ready things was kind of going back to my very first application that I had launched was it was a running and fitness app, and I didn't really have any idea of how to code. I didn't have a lot of money, and I found that there were these no code platforms that you could build tools with and build apps with. So I went down the path, and I kind of found, as most people are finding today when they investigate no code tools, is there's all kinds of different platforms out there. There's new ones that pop up every single day, almost, it seems like, and some are better than others. And eventually I was able to find one that I was able to build the app that I wanted to build with, and I launched it, and it was awesome. It was so cool to be able to say, like, I actually took this idea from literally that, just an idea, to a actual thing that I got it to a point where there was hundreds of people downloading it per day, and I wasn't even marketing it a lot. It just got picked up. I was able to optimize it on the App Store. And that was what really made me think, like, wow, there's a huge opportunity here for someone like me that didn't have the experience with this kind of stuff, that could actually pull these things off, that could actually pull off building software, that could pull off building like an actual business out of this. And then, that kind of turned into, well, hey, could you build this for me, Dan? Could you do this for me, possibly? And I was talking to people on my podcast, and then next one thing led to another, and here we are all these years later. And then I've just kind of followed along with some of the bigger name tools out there, like the bubbles of the world, and Flutterflow and Glide and all those other ones. And you see case studies over and over and over again of people who have actually built real businesses and real applications that you would never know were built with a no code tool. And it's the most, one of the most inspiring things I've ever seen. So that was kind of my aha moment. Was like, oh wow, like this actually can work, and no one even knows that it's built with no code.
That's quite a journey. So, I'd like to know what's the most technically complex project that you've delivered with no code? I mean, if there's any of such that you'd like to talk about.
Yeah, that's a good question. There's been several, I think. I don't know if to say the most. They're all complex in their own ways. um I mean, I think one example is we built a it's like a cross platform tool for a company called Rosemary Food Service, and it's basically a way for colleges to provide their meal updates for their sororities and fraternities. So it basically allows chefs to go on, create menus, create meals, even create things using like, entire menus using AI. And then there's a whole admin dashboard. There is, all kinds of different automations that run in the background with it, kind of without giving away all of their secret sauce of things. But then it's all synced with the native mobile app that the actual end users use on all the campuses. So then they can request a late plate to say, hey, I have a class at noon and I need to make sure that I can have lunch waiting for me when I'm out of class. And that also cuts off at certain times. So it's all time based and in their particular time zone, because there's schools on the East Coast, there's schools on the West Coast, there's schools all over the place. So that was one that we did a lot of. And then another one I could even mention real quick was we built an internal tool for a construction company that allows them to sync with their QuickBooks account. So they can basically they just didn't like the way that QuickBooks worked as far as work orders and invoicing went. So we basically made it so they can create all of it in their own app, and then it just syncs over to QuickBooks really easily. And we used a combination of a no-code app builder, and then we used an automation tool called make.com to then sync that over to QuickBooks. So that kind of, that integration was a little bit of a pain, and technically a pain to get up and going. But then once we did, it worked phenomenal, and they've been able to scale quite a bit with it. So yeah, those are a couple of examples of some of the more technical ones that we've done.
Those are great projects. So I'd like to ask, how would you respond to engineers and traditional coding app developers who dismiss them as just for prototypes? I mean, these no-code app development tools.
Yeah, that's a good question, because I have a close friend of mine who lives here in Pittsburgh with me that is a traditional developer, works for a big company, and we have this debate all the time. So yeah, it's very interesting, because there are pros and there's cons, right? So a traditional, coding developer might say, well, just like you said, well, maybe these tools are only good enough for prototypes. You can't really build anything super complex with them. To which I do have to concede, I think that is actually a valid concern at times. I mean, even some of these tools, just to kind of go on a quick little tangent, I think some of the new vibe coding tools, which we might get into later, such as like the Lovables of the world, the Replets of the world, things like that. I have yet to see a super complex application successfully launched that has 900 integrations and does all kinds of different things. So I've yet to see that. If there are examples, I'd be happy to see them and have my mind changed. But yeah, I do think that there are. You might not be able to create the most enterprise level, super complex, wildly feature rich tool that functions with the speed and the precision of a custom coded tool. But what's your end goal? Is it speed, or is it making sure that this is the most high quality product that you want to invest tons and tons of money and time into, right? So it's a trade-off. That's kind of how I respond to that. But there are also, I would also point to the fact that there are lots and lots of case examples of people who have built a tool with Bubble and then raised millions of dollars for their startup with just that tool, right? In record time, in months or a year or two. So, okay, if that was something that they had to go and custom build, would that be something that would have been able to be pulled off? I had a good friend of mine. We actually is the owner of the Podmatch platform, Alex Sanfilippo, where we met Ezekiel, and they had built. I interviewed him, and he had built the entire Podmatch platform on Bubble to start. It was a no-coded
Wow,
tool.
wow.
Yeah,
I would have thought Podmatch
exactly.
was actually developed from initially no-code tool. That's quite interesting.
Yeah, it's a custom built one. They've transitioned it to their own custom software, their own custom coded app, but it was originally built on Bubble. And I have to go back and really go and see what the episode was. It's on my show, but I interviewed him and his co-founder, and I think they grew it for 4 or 5 years before they even switched it over, and how big that got. You know what I mean? So that's a prime case study that I love to point people to.
That's great. So you talked about having known several companies that use no code to build their app and then went further to actually raise funds using the app they built with a no code tool. So do you mind sharing an example of such company or the story behind it?
Yeah, I actually haven't seen any kind of recent ones, to be honest. I just haven't followed with that. But I remember seeing one example. I don't even remember the name of it, to be honest with you. I'd have to get back to you on it. But it was, they built like an Uber for boats. I cannot remember the name of it to save my life. I'd have to Google it or something, or ChatGPT it. But it was like basically if you're on vacation or you're somewhere where there's obviously lots of boats on the coast somewhere, you can put up your boat to be rented, and then you can also be able to say, hey, I want to go and rent a boat for the day. And you don't have to go through like the actual businesses. It was kind of like an Airbnb again for boats. And gosh, I think they raised a couple $1 million on a seed round or something
Wow.
like that. Yeah, like for expansion. And it was only inside of like, I want to say it was inside of like 8 or 9 months that they were able to do that. Yeah, and I wish I could remember the name. I'll have to see if I can find it for you.
That's like really interesting. I mean, like it opens a whole new level of possibility to what you can use no code tools to do. I mean, that's massive. So in the overview video on your website, you talked about how you first have a consulting call with your clients to see if what they are trying to build is feasible with your no code tool. So I'd like to ask, what are some of the criteria for a project to fit into the Dapper Fast Track program, and when should teams still choose traditional coding?
Wow, that's a very good question. Again, it can be very broad, but I'll basically say this. That's why I like to kind of talk through with people on what are you actually trying to build. Again, kind of like I mentioned earlier, are you trying to build something? What's your main goal? Is speed your main goal, or is the ultimate, quality, super secure, super feature robust type of application something that you're trying to do? Are you trying to just build a native mobile app that's going to be on the app stores? Are you trying to build a web application? Are you trying to build just an internal tool, or is this going to be a scalable SaaS model? There's a lot of different things that can go into that as far as like what are you actually trying to build. And then I think the second most important thing is maybe the most important thing is the actual the features that are needed. And that's one of the things that's a lot of these new tools have changed the game with, the vibe coding tools, because they're just making so many more things possible that might not have used to be possible with no code tools and with just prompt engineering. But that's really what we're trying to qualify for and look for is like, okay, are you, and the other thing too is, are you flexible with with the path to get there, right? I often use this analogy when you're climbing a mountain, right? Say you're out hiking and you're climbing a mountain. Um, are you the person that you have to follow one path up the mountain because that's what your plan says and there's no deviating it? Or are you willing to go off road when there's a tree blocking the path or there's a washout on the mountain and you have to go around? There's a million different ways to go up a mountain. And are you the person that has to stick to the path, or are you the person that's willing to be flexible? Because you'd be surprised. I think most people are pretty flexible, especially when they're like launching something or they have this idea that they just want to get out into the world. People tend to be pretty flexible. Like, I want it has to do these things. Obviously, these are must have features and must have designs, things like that. But I'm also flexible. Like, if a no code solution doesn't quite allow this, but we can kind of work around it and kind of do something in a different way, then I'm okay with that. Right. But, we have worked with several clients in the past that are, maybe you already went and had someone build a Figma design for you, and it has to be pixel by pixel exactly the way this is designed because it just has to look that way, or it actually just has to function the way that you have it in your mind, even if the technology does not exist, whether it's custom coded or not, to actually pull this off. And that's always a red flag for us, is if you are very set in your ways, if you're very by the book, this has to be this stickler way, then it might not be the best fit. Not that we're, we try to do the best we can, obviously, if somebody has ready to go designs or ready to go ideas, to make it work the way that you want it to work. It's your app, right? It's your tool. It's not ours. But I've always found that being flexible, being willing to adapt, being willing to say, okay, I'll compromise here, but as long as it does this thing, that's okay, is usually the best approach when using these kind of things, because it's kind of like Avatar, right? Like the way of water. It's kind of like you got to be flexible. You got to go with the flow. You kind of got, because the
Mm,
ultimate idea is to launch this thing and to get it in front of people and actually use it and actually make money and actually grow a business with it. It does nobody any good if it just sits in development for 3 years and never sees the light of day, just because it needs to be a certain way.
yeah,
So yeah, I hope that answers that.
yeah. So Dapper No Code was recently named Best No Code Development in the USC for 2025. So, what does this recognition say about how far no code tools have come in replacing traditional engineering solutions?
Yeah, that was such an honor. I really, that was so cool. Such an honor to be given that. And I think that what that says about about the state of the industry and the state of where things are, is that obviously it's something that is actually recognizable, obviously, right? But two, it's also like it's a legitimate, it's almost like a legitimization of this business model works, and that was something that was like, I knew back then, I knew that like an agency like this would actually work. I remember getting into all these different things when I was starting up the business, and everyone at the time, it was everyone was running a marketing agency, right? Everyone's like, the lead generation, we'll run your Facebook ads for you, we'll run your Google ads for you, kind of thing. And I'm sure there was a ton of money to be made in those kinds of things, but that was never something that interested me, because I was just very into the custom software, the way that you could build things out of nothing, and just take your idea and dump it onto something and actually make it real. So it was a slower way to climb to the top, I will say, of not only as far as recognition goes, but also as far as revenue goes, because when you're offering something that helps people print money, that's a very easy it's a very easy sell to have, right? Not that you can't print money with software if you have the right idea. I mean, look at Lovable; they're basically printing money, But I think that it really goes to show that and I think that's the other thing too, is like, even though no code has actually democratized software development, there's still a learning curve. There's still the need for expertise sometimes, right? That's where the bulk of people that we work with come from, is they dive into something like a Lovable or Bubble or a Dalo or Glide or whatever. And then they try to go down the rabbit hole of building it, and then realize that, this stuff is still actually a little complicated. This stuff actually needs a learning curve. This is going to take me a little bit of time to learn how this software works, what I can actually do with it, how to make it actually usable and nice looking and functioning and not break. There's a lot to it. There's still a lot to it, So that's kind of where then we step in and say, hey, we can take it from here and actually be more of a consultative partner, rather than just, hey, build me this thing. Like, you can go to Upwork and have people build things, you can go to Fiverr and have people build things for you. We try to be a lot more consultative. And I think that's kind of where that kind of recognition comes from, is realizing that there's a lot more than just hiring a developer with us.
Great. So, I like to ask, as no code or AI tools evolve, how do you see traditional engineering roles changing? Should students still learn how to code traditionally? I mean, I'd like to hear your thoughts on this.
Yeah, another good question. Yes, I would say I mean, think about, I mean, it's kind of funny. The irony of the no code stuff is that it's all built with custom code, right? Like it's not like, you know what I mean? Like it's kind of, that's
Yeah,
the irony of it. It all has to be built with
yeah,
code. So yes, I would still
yeah.
recommend learning
The
code.
tool was also built by traditional coders, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But the beauty of it is that, and I think this is where traditional developers. I mean, I remember even taking. I remember years ago I took one of the Bubble boot camps. They offer these. I think even still to this day, you can take like an 8-week boot camp or something. And the instructor that I had was a former custom software developer, full stack developer that had basically, when he told his initial story, was that he had tripped upon Bubble one day and tried it out and was blown away at the fact of how fast he was able to build something that would have normally taken him, like basically just like a login and sign up feature for an application that was basically already built for him and took about a second and a half to do, rather than him actually custom building it and doing other things and then building a dashboard and then kind of going from there. And that was kind of what made him be like, hey, you know what? There's some merit to this, because if I have additional ideas, or I want to stand up a prototype, or I just want to kind of see how something's looking, I can vibe code it. I can kind of type it in. I can build this without going in and custom building this thing that might take me a day or two or whatever. I can spit something out in a matter of minutes or an hour, and that saves me a lot of time, and that saves me a lot of resource. And that is something that I think is only going to get better inside of all of these tools. And I think that that's kind of where it can fit inside of the custom, development world. But yeah, I would say definitely keep learning coding. It's not like you have to forget about it. But I do think that it's very interesting. I've talked about this on my show as well. Like, where does that leave? Where does AI and all this stuff leave the traditional developer? And I think that there's, when you really look at critically, like the vibe coding tools as of today, as of the end of July 2025, when we're recording this, I still think there's a lot to be desired that it really needs, you need a human brain for, that you need someone that actually can look at the code and look at the final product, and make changes. It's not like it'll take you all of the way. So yeah, I would still say definitely learn all the programming that you can, but be open to the fact that there are a lot of shortcuts you can take with these kind of tools.
Great. So, Dan, do you think there will come a time where artificial intelligence and no-code tools will fully replace app development using traditional coding?
Yes, I do, but I don't think it will be for a very, very, very long time. I don't think it's going to be this year. I don't think it's going to be 5, maybe even 10 years. I think we're in the very, very, very early stages of this right now, even though like the early stages are pretty incredible on what they can actually accomplish. I don't think it'll ever be fully 100% replaced. Um, but I do think that there's, when you let's look at what the state of this world will be 20, 25 years from now. um I am of the opinion that I believe, maybe not 100%, but I would say that at least 80 to 90% of things that are built will be done through the use of AI. And there will be, maybe not even using no code, but like something that's just prompt built, that can build an entire code base from prompting, which is a form of no code, right? You're not coding, you're just prompting. You're building code with prompts, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah, I don't know if it'll ever 100% do it, but I think the trend is going up. I think, especially, like, I know I talked with one of my mentors, and he was basically like, yeah, AI and no code are going to be the same thing in the next 5 to 10 years. Like, basically, I think Bubble's doing that. They've implemented a way that you can just prompt build your app, but then once you're in there, you still have to drag and drop, and you have to click and point and change things. And what they're going to do is roll out a new thing that's, once that's built with AI, you can go into the software and then prompt like, hey, I want this dashboard to look a little bit different, but this list is also not pulling the correct information. And then I also want an avatar to show next to the user's name. And then that will actually build the no code stuff for you. So that's really exciting. I'm very interested to see how that comes out this fall. But I think, yeah, that was a long answer to your question. But my final answer is yes, but I think I think it'll be the majority of it. I don't know if it'll ever fully replace it.
Hmm, great perspective. So, Dan, your Best of the Best Review Award highlights faster and 70% cheaper development compared to traditional coding development. So, I'd like to ask, being faster and saving so much cost, are there any trade-offs? I mean, would you like to talk about those?
Yeah, man, there's a good quote I heard one time, and I can never remember how it goes exactly, but there's three levers, right? You can have quality, you can have speed, and you can have gosh, I can't remember. But it was a good friend of mine. He told me it one day, and I wish I would have wrote it down because it was like you can have something fast, but it's not going to be cheap. You can also have something not quality, and it's not going to be very expensive. Kind of all that stuff. Like I'm really butchering it, so I'll just move on. But there's some trade offs, right? You know, if you're only going to pay a smaller amount for a big. So yeah, here's a good example. So we're building a Upwork clone basically for a client. I can't really get much into it
Hmm.
because we haven't launched it yet, but it's going to be in kind of in a whole different market. And if anyone has been on Upwork, you realize like is a platform that has had a ton of money and time and investment put into it. It's very robust, right? It handles so many things. And we basically built a clone of that for, I think we really undersold ourselves. Like it was actually way cheaper than looking back on it than we probably should have charged. Now, are there some trade-offs? Yeah. I mean, it's nowhere near as robust as the actual clone of Upwork, as the actual tool, but it does the job, right? You can join as a freelancer, you can join as a client, you can post a project, you can bid on jobs, you can get hired, you can get paid, you can pay people, you can do all of those things. So is it as high of a quality as the actual Upwork platform? No. Does it do the same things? Yes. Did we build it in like a fraction of the time? Yes. Right. So those are some of the
And a
trade
fraction of the cost too.
at a fraction of the cost. Yes, exactly. So yeah, those are kind of the trade-offs. And but it's also, and that's kind of the big thing with all the way that the world is going now is some people you have to think about the first mover advantage. I think that was also why these clients, it's a team of people, like they see an opportunity in a market that there is not a good solution for, and there is likely going to be something in there very soon. So being the first mover there is critical because that's where a lot of the like look at ChatGPT. Are they the best AI tool? I don't know, but they were the first mover, right? And
Yeah,
therefore,
yeah.
when people think of LLM models, it's ChatGPT, like the normal
ChatGPT,
person.
yeah.
Exactly, exactly. So
Yeah.
there's a huge advantage of launch early, even if it's not perfect, and capture the
Mm.
market, and then you move from there. So that's, I think, what a lot of people don't really like kind of think about sometimes. So yeah, I mean those are some of the trade-offs, I think, as well. But then that's kind of the beauty of it, is you can always launch and iterate, and you can change and you can update and you can make things better.
Those are really, really, really great examples. So then I'd like to ask for someone who's looking to learn how to build apps with no code and AI tools, which tools would you recommend them to go check or start up with?
Yeah, I get asked that a lot. Man, it changes all the time because everything's so new. It's like we're in like the wild west of what's going on now. But I would say, everyone's heard of all the vibe coding tools now, like like Lovable and Replit and all those other ones. There's a very interesting another tool right now called famous.ai. A good friend of mine, Alex Mayer, has put that together, and that's definitely one to check out. But then as far as, kind of building some of the other things that aren't vibe coding tools, that people may never have heard of, is I would definitely check out Bubble, right? Bubble.io. They're kind of one of the biggest and oldest names in the space. They started around like 2010 or something like that.
Hmm.
And that's definitely one to check out. I always say, I think Glide is a very good one to kind of learn some basic things with, but they've come a long way. You can do a lot of cool things there. Another tool that I've used that I'm a big fan of is Adalo, Adalo. They are a lot like Bubble, just not, they're kind of like the Apple of, I call them the Apple of no code tool builders, because their software and their design is way cleaner and way more easy to understand. It's so much more intuitive. Whereas Bubble is more like the Android. It's very like, you still need to have some coding tools to be able to kind of really pull off some really crazy stuff in Bubble. You really do. Like, it's very complicated.
Then I see your
Yes, yeah. I mean, I use PC as my computer. I do have iPhones. I've always had iPhones my whole life, though, so I'm kind of like a hybrid. But I hate Macs. I really hate Macs as computers. I really do. But I love iPhones. I'm a big fan of iPhones.
Well, yeah, it was really obvious. I actually prefer Android, and of course, I prefer Windows. I, I'm not really a fan of Apple, but I think they're cool. But I mean, what they do, I just like it better when I use the alternative, which is Android in the case of mobile phones, and of course,
Mm.
Windows in the case of laptops. That aside. So, Dan, I'd like to ask again. Um, as regards software development, now, what foundational skills would you recommend, or would you uh, think will remain valuable regardless of tools like no-code tools and AI tools for app development?
Yeah, this is a very important question. I'm really glad you asked this. I actually just covered this on my show recently. I think the foundational skill, one of if not the foundational skill to always have, regardless of how far AI advances, regardless of whatever tools come out, is critical thinking. I think critical thinking, being able to actually stop and pause and think about why you're doing something. Is this the best tool? Is this the best way? Is probably the foundational thing. I think if that almost goes without saying, to be honest. I think critical thinking is your biggest thing. Now, I also think that strategic thinking is also a very um, like foundational skill, as far as not only thinking through what am I doing here, why am I building this tool, why am I doing this thing, why am I even building this business, but where am I going, what's my next move, what's my next 5 moves, what's my next 15 moves with this. Being able to kind of forecast and predict where you want to go with something, I think automatically puts you ahead of the game. And then I think one of the foundational things that separates humans from AI, obviously, is the ability to communicate. The ability to just communicate with other people and understand and empathize is something that I think is can maybe get lost in the tech world. We can get a rap for being a little cold hearted and socially awkward at times as a group. Like we're just kind of the stereotypical, like, guys behind a computer who drink Red Bull and eat chips all day kind of thing. Um,
Yeah,
but I think that's been one of the main things that has separated me from the pack, and has also, kind of, made us best of 2025 kind of thing, is the push for customer service and going above and beyond, and actually making sure that we are friendly and communicative and understanding and empathetic towards whatever our customers are doing, because everyone's doing something different, and there's always going to be a market for that. There's always room to be professional. There's always room to be nice. There's always room to be courteous. There's always room to be accommodating, right? When you're dealing with
yeah,
people, and that's that, you always are in the business of people, no matter what you're doing. So I think those are all big skills that maybe aren't, tech skills, obviously, like the hard skills, but more of the soft skills. I think that would really serve people well.
yeah. So the takeaway lesson for me now is that critical thinking and avid communication skills are of real importance when it comes to software development.
Of course,
Yeah,
100%.
yeah. So then I normally like to save this one for the last question. So what does innovation mean to you, and what do you think it will look like in the field of building apps?
Innovation look like to me? When I hear the word innovation, this is kind of how I process this. Like when I hear the word innovation, I actually go back to I think of my I went to Allegheny College, and we had to do a senior project as part of our curriculum to graduate. And I was a political science major at the time. I've obviously switched career tracks from that, but the basic theory of my composition at the time was a punctuated equilibrium theory as it related to policy. And what punctuated equilibrium was, you basically have a status quo. You have a status quo of something, a status quo of something. It's kind of the same. It's accepted by everyone. And then boom, there's a triggering event. There's something that happens that shakes the foundation of things. And then all of a sudden, there's an entirely new equilibrium. There's an entirely new status quo. It's that punctuated. It's like status quo for a very long time. And you think about like an earthquake chart, right? Like it jumps up and it jumps back down. And it's kind of a
Mm,
new equilibrium, right?
yeah.
I think innovation, I say all that to say I think innovation can be, it can be massive leaps forward of like, hey, we went from the horse to all of a sudden now we have an automobile, right? But when the first
Yeah.
automobile came out, it wasn't like a Ferrari, right? It was like something that was, you had to crank it by hand. But there was that initial like complete shift in an innovation of something that was not reliant on actual horses. There wasn't something that was, it was like an entirely big step forward, right? You know what I'm trying to say? But then
Yeah.
as far as the second piece, I think then it's innovated on, it's tweaked. They had the prototype of the car, and then they changed, hey, let's make the tires thicker. Hey, let's put a roof on it in case it rains. Hey, let's put windows so you can roll them down if you want. I think there's also a thing of innovation, or a side of innovation that's iterative, that's like small changes, incremental changes over time. And I actually fall more on that side of that's what I think innovation is. I think like, when ChatGPT came on the scene, what was it, like 2020, 2021, something like that, 2022.
Yeah.
And it was boom, it was something so new, it was something like radically different. But since then, what has changed with it, right? There's been new models released, there's been different types of things you can do with it. That's innovative because they find different use cases for it. They find different ways that you can, like, hey, let's try to make it so it can pull this task off or this task off or whatever. And that's what I love about software development, is that, and I would tell my clients this all the time, is it's never done. It's never done. When you build a software, when you're building it and you want to grow it, it's a living, breathing organism. It's never quite done. And it can always be better. And there has to be a point where you're okay with launching things. There has to be a point when you're ready to go live, when you accept the fact that, hey, this might not be 100% done, but it'll also never 100% be done. And that's okay, because we're going to iterate, we're going to study, and we're going to innovate the new ways of doing something and new ways of making something look that are going to be better and that are going to be improved and that are going to serve the end user to the best of its ability. So that's what innovation is to me. And then what was the second part of your question? How does that relate to software
The
development?
field of, yeah, building apps.
To the field of building apps. Yeah, I think you're seeing this with what I mentioned earlier, like with Bubble, right? They came out with, I think last year was the first time where they said, hey, you can actually prompt build your app in our software. So instead of picking a template or starting from their basic boilerplate template, you could say, hey, I need a dashboard app that conglomerates all my sales data and my appointments in one place. Boom, go. And then it creates it. And then there was the problem of, okay, that's built, but now I still need to be able to fix it and to change it and to update it. So now there's an innovation of, hey, once it's in there, then you can still continue to prompt and you can still continue to do things, right? So they almost like create different problems of their own by innovating, right? That's kind of the way sometimes things go. So in terms of like, that's just one small example, but in terms of app development, I think like, I obviously think a lot of the vibe coding tools are here to stay. But I also think tools like Lovable, tools like Replit, whatever, Famous AI, like they're going to innovate. They're going to continue to become better over time. That's why I'm not on the bandwagon that these things are going to replace software development in the next year or 5 or 10 or anything. I'm thinking that it's going to be a lot slower of a play. I think that things are going to slowly improve over time, to the point where, a lot, like I said, I think a lot of it's going to be AI based and prompt based, but I think there will always be the need for human innovation, seeing the problems that maybe AI is missing, seeing the opportunities in the real world, in the market, that artificial intelligence can just never see. And I think that as it applies to that, I think those are kind of the biggest things that come to my mind and that I see as far as being in this field every single day, is just the openness for the human touch is still there.
Really great perspective, Dan. So finally, I'd like to ask, where can our audience connect with you to learn more about your work and this no code and AI app building thing you do?
Yeah, absolutely. The first thing you can do, you can go, like you mentioned, to our site, dappernocode.com. We have a bunch of resources and things there. And then I've also mentioned my show a couple of times. It's called the Tech Bites podcast. You can find it on the website there. It's Byte is BYTES, Tech Bites podcast. I talk about a lot of these things, a lot of other things, and just kind of do some commentating on recent stories and have a lot of cool interviews on there with people involved in this space. So that's where I would say you can find me.
Great, Dan. It's an honor having you here on the show today. I really appreciate you taking our time to come on this interview.
Thank you so much for having me. This was really, really awesome. I could probably talk for 2 more hours on this stuff, but I know we got to wrap it up. But yeah, thank you for having me on. I really appreciate it.